It's so exciting to be here. My heart just is kind of exploding in a lot of ways, being back and seeing so many new faces, seeing old faces, and seeing what the Lord has been doing here. And I want to cry. Probably will cry a bit during this preach, but yeah, guys, I'm so proud of you. I just proud of the Taters and what they've built, and all of you leaders and just people that are coming around, and what the Lord is doing in this church is significant and it's valuable. And I just want to say, be aware of what the Lord is doing in and through you and why he's brought you to Hillside. I had a dreaming session once at Spur, 2-for-1 burgers, when I first moved here with Caleb, Brendan, and Cade. And we dreamt what we wanted Hillside to be like. Be aware of what you're dreaming for your church. And Caleb was like, I want to lead youth. I want the youth to be pumping and thriving. I have a heart to lead youth, and he is the youth pastor now, leading them, and it's pumping and thriving. And I was like, I want young adults to be leading. I want more women to step up in our church. I want to see, the God just come in power. And I remember we saw all those things we dreamt of. Bren dreamt of worship, young adults, and we just saw God do things. We dreamt for this space, and I know a lot of you have dreamt for the space. Sky's dreamt for the space, the Stratums, you guys, the Smiths. Be aware of what you've dreamt of for your church and what the Lord has put in you to release in this space if you're here. And so I just want to honor you guys for what you're running after and for what the Lord is doing here. I'm excited. It wrecks me in the best way. So it's so good to be back and seeing such beautiful things. I hear wonderful things about Hillside back home. I get updated by Sky all the time. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Chanel. I don't know where I'm from. I've been all over my whole life. I was born in the States, raised in Zimbabwe, lived in Cape Town, Knysna, and the Lord very clearly told me to come to Durban. Landed up here. Sky told me to not come to Hillside because there's no young adults. So she was like, no, don't come here. Move up here, but don't come here. And I was like, the Lord said. And he's really faithful when he tells you to go somewhere. And 2018, he told me I'd be moving in 2 years. So I remember saying yes to core team, telling Roger, I'm leaving. And sure enough, the Lord moved me back to Bethel to do my second and third year. I took a good 10-year gap. Never thought that I would be going back. Didn't really like America. I was born there and didn't ever want to live there again. But the Lord called me back, and the last 2 years have been really good. It's been very raw. I've had a lot of stuff come up, and I'm excited to just share some of my testimony. And that's some of the things I'm going to minister out of, is just the testimony of what the Lord's done in my life and what he's been teaching me through it and reminding me of. And the word, certain scriptures have come alive in a new way. How many of you know when you get freedom and breakthrough in something, you're like, oh, I've read this 100 times, but now it's different. And I really feel like my testimony is something I get to release. I've seen a lot of people set free from it. My mom got set free too with me. I did school with my mom. How beautiful and cringy. She beatboxed in front of my class. Let me tell you, she can't beatbox. So as a daughter, I walked through things other people were not walking through. Learning to celebrate my mom in her risk-taking and beatboxing. No, but she's powerful. And so my heart's actually for Europe. Lord took me to Bethel and I'm burning for Europe. It's burning for Europe since 2018. In Riga, Latvia, the Lord told me you'd move in 2 years, and will you say yes to this nation? Hey. In the last month of school, every Monday, the Lord just wrecked me for Europe. No matter what I was doing, it would just intervene, and I would feel the Lord on Europe. I've seen Europe get saved in a vision, and I know what the Lord is on the move. And I just want to tell you, whatever your yes is and whatever the Lord's calling you to, it's worth it. Be aware of what he's doing in you. and what He's calling you to, and just be obedient. So, does that sound good? I'm not sure what exactly the Lord's going to do, but it's going to be good. So, I was not sure of what I wanted to preach on exactly, but I know my story of what the Lord has unlocked in me and unraveled in the last 2 years, and I knew parts of it I wanted to bring today. But I'm also very aware of I'm like, Lord, I don't know where exactly you want to go, and I feel like this is very vulnerable, and I feel like I left, and KZN went through a hectic 2 years. I was like, I hear the Lord, I'm moved. No, I'm all for being wherever He calls you to be, but I felt for you guys. I was praying for you. There were multiple of us praying on that side even. But the Lord has actually, even though I haven't been here and you guys have experienced quite a lot, the Lord has actually been unraveling a lot of pain in my own life. And I feel like what I want to talk about is not the most exciting thing on the planet, but it's one of those things that unlocks us into freedom and joy. And we sang it today. Brain was singing it tomorrow morning, into dancing, all of those things. We know those words. We know the right things, but what the Lord has been doing is just like deep work. It hit me left field. So I will tell you my story. I'm going to second year, and I'm like, great, I'm a leader, I'd been serving, and the Lord said to me straight away, don't pick up a mic, I'm going to break performance off of you. And I was like, okay, I feel like that's something you've broken off me multiple times, Lord. Whenever you get an upgrade in life, I'm not sure about you, but for me, I feel like another level of performance is broken off. New leadership position, new space, all of that. So I was like, okay, I'm not sure what that looks like. And then just before my 30th birthday, so this is Feb, school started in September. And just to let you know, second year is all focused on leadership and picking up the mic. And so I'm not picking up a mic. And we're in this class. So we do these classes for 8 weeks. And I'm sitting, and the Lord had just told me by my 30th birthday, I can pick up a mic. And so this is February. And we're in this class, and it's a beautiful class. It's called All In, all about being all in for the Lord. So I'm like, oh, we're going to get wrecked. It's going to be about destiny, all these good things. And her name's Jess Butcher. She's sharing. She's one of the pastors there, and she suddenly stops and pivots, goes a whole nother direction. And what the Lord had been doing in me that past week was actually I was in home group, and someone said, I got free in first year. We were sharing testimonies of second-guessing and mental torment. And as she said it, something clicked in me that I struggle with that. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know I struggled with it. It just hit me from left field, and I was like, oh, what? I second-guess myself all the time. I didn't even know I second-guess. I second-guess most words that come out of my mouth, and it's almost like mental torment. In typical, I feel like maybe it's Christian fashion, but I went stoic and just played it cool. Next day in school, I fought to find her and wept at her feet as she prayed for me. Nothing changed though. So I'm sitting in this class a week later, and Jess starts sharing all these lies people had spoken over her. Oh, you're really zealous for a woman. Or that's cool that you have those dreams, but you won't be able to do that. You're too young. All these lies that people had spoken about her, and suddenly I sit there, and everyone's drunk in the spirit, and I am weeping, and I cannot stop weeping, because suddenly the Lord brings up all these moments in the past 10 years of ministry in my life where I had been called things or misinterpreted things, all these lies I was believing. I led worship once back in Nysa, and someone asked for an appointment with me, and they proceeded to say they asked that the Lord would mute their mouths if they weren't meant to say this, but they wanted to block their ears the whole time I led worship. So what did that do in me? Every time I led worship, I had a slight fear that people wanted to block their ears. Hey. I once preached at a youth thing, in a church, not in our own home church, with a whole bunch of youth from different churches in Isla, and a man felt the need to sit down and test my theology for 20 minutes after. So what did that make me think? Like, oh, I need to make sure I'm really theologically sound, which there's wisdom, but not out of fear, not out of like torment of it, will it be enough? And then there were times where I'd preach and someone would feel the need to like close every possible rabbit trail for 5 minutes after. And so what did I do when I preached? I was fearful of leaving any open rabbit trails. I don't know if you've heard Jesus preach. He leaves a lot more questions than answers. But all these things, like I've been compared to some interesting things being a leader. Being a leader is hard, guys, just so you know. There's pain involved. But what had happened was these lies had caused me to second guess a lot of what was coming out of my mouth. What does that do? It actually silences you. And so as I sat there, I wept for like 6 hours. Everyone's drunk in this class. I think the lies thing was just for me. Random pivot, rabbit trail, and then back. And I sat there and I wept and I wept. I wept for 6 hours straight. I went home to my parents' house and I'm weeping. My dad prays. He's like, what is wrong with you? And I go to home group and it's my week to share my testimony. I showed up red-faced, a total mess, and just shared the ugly parts of my story of being a leader in church. Don't get me wrong, I love the church. Church is something I burn for, like to see the bride, like be all that we were created to be. But I had had pain I had carried for 10 years and not dealt with it properly. And what that happens is it just keeps building and it actually silences you. So I sat there and shared my story, and they were beautiful. I shared for half an hour, and they covered me for half an hour of like just prophesying, calling out destiny, just covering me. Because, there had been so many lies that I was believing. As a woman, as a leader, as someone who leads worship, as a preacher, and the Lord just stripped them all off. And I realized all that second guessing was because I had partnered with lies instead of the truth of who God said I was. Don't get me wrong, I know how to take feedback from a good leader in my life, but these were people that weren't leaders in my life. And there's wisdom, but this wasn't wisdom. This was a handful of people. And so I felt like so free. How many of you know after a 6-hour cry, you feel really free? You might have burst blood vessels the next day and all that sort of stuff, but I felt really free. And what the Lord started to speak to me about was, Chanel, you didn't feel the pain of those words, rather you just avoided them and buried them. I would get angry, people would know it had happened, like I wasn't quiet about it. Like my close friends knew. But rather than fully dealing with it, I would just get angry and move on. But they were piling up and causing me to second guess. So I go to the next all-in class. I'm really excited to share my testimony. I had turned 30, so I was like, I can pick up a mic. The Lord said, they didn't look my way. I was like standing up running to the front to share my story. I was so free. I like couldn't believe that you could not second guess things coming out of your mouth constantly and like all of that. I was totally unaware of it, but it was exhausting. And so I'm really excited to share. They don't look my way and I don't get to share my story or pick up a mic. The Lord had told me my performance was actually because I was pivoting to not offend people. I would be quiet to not offend people, not be misunderstood, and that caused up a level of performance in my life. Can I just tell you now, if there's lies you are believing that are causing you to perform in an unhealthy way, He wants to strip them off. Because you were created to be exactly who He wants you to be, and you do not have to perform or to be misunderstood or offend people. And Haley Braun, she's a pastor at Bethel, said, Holy Spirit's the best pastor. Took a lot of pressure off my shoulders. So from here, the Lord's the best pastor. I'm going to trust Him to pastor the people that I get to minister to. I'm going to trust Him to pastor and fill in the gaps that I might miss. So I go back to class. I don't get to share my testimony, but I'm wrecked, and I'm like, the Lord is good. I feel free. I feel like I went through deliverance, basically. And 2 weeks later, I'm in a class, and someone picks me out of nowhere. They pivot, and they start prophesying over my mom. I see your mom lying in bed, frustrated, not being able to get out of the hole that she's been in, frustrated, crying out to the Lord, all these things. He reads my mom's mail. I am weeping as the whole room begins to weep too. There was something that the Lord did. My mom phones me the next day, and she's like, Chanel, I give up. I'm in school. It's been 2 years. I haven't seen this breakthrough. I've seen little breakthroughs, but what's the point? And I was like, I have a word for you. She heard that word, and she grabbed it like she's never grabbed a word before. She started telling all her friends about this word, that the Lord sees her, knows her, wants to free her, like all these things shifted. We go back to this class, and they're unlocking voices. She decides she's going to go up to the front. She goes up to the front, gets prayer, and like something comes off her throat. And and then they were like, go and speak on the mic just to unlock your voice. So she goes and grabs the mic. And it was a mission to get her up to the front. Let's just say like 3 rows back, putting her hand out. I was like, Mom, what are you doing? You have to stand in the front for the mic. So I remember just like 6 times shoving her to the front. She's finally in the front. She grabs the mic. I take out my phone to record. All you hear is me screaming for 2 minutes, because as she started to speak, all I could feel were like my hands in electric sockets as the power of God like went through my body. My mom had been like really stuck for many years because she had been silenced in church. And really misunderstood. From that day, she got 6 opportunities to speak, and multiple people got set free and delivered. It's 6, like random 6 opportunities. She's a different human. But there had been something like blocking her voice and lies. She was like living in constant lies of like, oh, no one will value my voice, no one will hear me. And suddenly she just got set free. And I've just noticed that the Lord, so we went back to that class the next week. We got to release our testimony. Like 100 people got set free of the same thing we were struggling with. And the week after, we got to share it again, and more testimonies came out of it. We shared it again this year, and so many people got set free in that class. But what the Lord has been showing me is that if there are things that you are struggling with, He doesn't want you stuck there. And for me, it's been this thing of I've been really fearful of pain. I don't know why. I've had all the right things to say. But Corey Russell says only a weeping God can wipe away our tears. The reality is the Lord knows where you're at. He knows your pain, He sees your pain, and He's not scared of it. And we can no longer be those Christians that just suck it up and move on. Don't wallow in your pain, don't get stuck there, all of that. But feel what you're feeling and bring it to the Lord. He knows it. He knows your pain. He wept. And so that has led me into this thing of looking at Mary and Martha. And is this good? Are you guys with me? So far, I've just shared testimony, but we're going to go after that stuff afterwards too. So if that resonates with you and you're like, oh, actually, I want prayer for these things. I've been struggling in this area. We're going to go after that. So pain. Actually, I'm going to share one more testimony before we get into my preach. But it's whew. I was sitting in 3rd year class. So once the Lord starts unraveling like things you want for Him, He's paid for everything. So He's going to unravel anything that doesn't line up with Him. When we love Him, when we serve Him, everything just, He's going to bring it up. And so I'm sitting in 3rd year class, and it's Black History Month. And so I'm going to share this, but please know my heart that I don't want this to be a race thing. It's a pain thing. And so I'm sitting in class, And someone I really dearly admire and like respect says, Lord, I just thank you for Black History Month. And something in my heart gets offended by it and triggered, and I know that's when I remove myself because the Lord's bringing up something. And I went home and phoned my pastor, and I was like, oh my word, I don't know what to do. Like, this is triggering me. I don't want to be seen as a racist, but I have so much pain from Zimbabwe. And growing up in Zimbabwe and being white. And we moved to South Africa when I was 10, and I interpreted that as like, South Africa was in their first decade of independence. I felt like if I showed any pain, that I would be seen as racist. And that was never my heart. Or I would devalue Black people's pain, and please know that's not my heart. But the reality is I experienced deep pain in Zimbabwe. And I shut it off and not allowed myself to feel any of it. 2 decades later, the Lord brings it up in a safe space for me to deal with it. Just some things of like, my granddad was beat up close to death twice on his farm. He lived with like a deformed arm after, and as a 10-year-old, like, I didn't know how to process that fully. Thanks. So I just shut it off. We lost our farm. My mom got put in jail for a bribe, so I remember waiting at the gate. My dad was in the States for hours. And then she finally came, and like, she had got out miraculously and all of that, but there had been all this pain, and I had never dealt with it, out of fear of how people would perceive me, out of fear of what people would say. And the Lord just brought it all up. Deep trauma. I lay on the couch for 5 days, guys. Your body needs to feel what it needs to feel when you're going through pain and what you've experienced. That is for every person in the room. The Lord wants you to know that He is not afraid of the pain that you have gone through or what you have walked through, that He actually wants you to feel it. Not get stuck there and wallow for 20 years, but actually feel it to release it to Him. He died for your pain, for your full freedom, anything holding you back. And so around Zimbabwe and race and all of this, I had so much fear of my pain. Some of my best friends are Black, so please know it's not to do with race. Like, I love all races. I'm for all races. I love people. But as a white person, I'd experienced pain that had not been allowed to be felt. I don't get to sit in it. I don't get to like stay there forever, but it was my reality for a season that I interpreted from culture that I'm not allowed to feel any pain. That's a hard topic in South Africa. It's a hard topic for me to say out loud. But I just want you to know, no matter what your race is or the pain you've experienced, like, it's allowed. You're allowed to feel your pain. You're allowed to feel what you've felt, and that you've experienced things in your life, and the Lord weeps with you. And so this has caused me to just start digging into pain and a sound mind. I don't have much time. Oh. Okay, so 2 Timothy, the Lord says, like, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. I did not live with a sound mind for many years. There were aspects. I saw breakthrough. Please don't think I wasn't a Christian for that time. Definitely was. Loved the Lord. But I didn't live in the full freedom of what the Lord had paid for, what I had access to. There were these lies I had partnered with instead of truth. And because of that, I had let my mindsets shift. I had let my behavior adjust instead of letting Him adjust my behavior, instead of letting Him come in. We have not been given a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And so I've been thinking about the demoniac, where the Lord comes and casts out Legion. And he comes into his right mind. And before that, he kept hanging out in the tombs. And the Lord's been like, oh, if we're not wary of where our minds are, we end up in the tombs, which is like death. Worst case scenarios, anxiety, fear, all of that, like it's just not life-giving. But what the Lord wants us to do, and I'm not saying you have a legion, don't worry, bring us into the freedom that he's paid for. That is not the places, that is your past, that is not what he wants, that is not your portion, that is not what you have access to, but bringing you out of that into like freedom, and he was sitting in his right mind. Anything that is trying to steal our sound mind is not of him. So if you are triggered by things, if things are coming against you, sit in your pain. Sit in it. Sit at his feet and feel it. Don't run from it. Don't ignore it. Don't try. Let's go to Mary and Martha. So, Mary and Martha in Luke 11. Let's go to Luke. Luke 11? No, John 11, sorry. Sorry, guys. John 11. So we know the story of Mary and Martha. We're always told, don't be a Martha. Am I right? Don't just serve, like actually be at his feet in that right season of when you're meant to be sitting at his feet. I love serving. Don't get me wrong. I love to serve. I think it's what we were created to be. I think if we lie at his feet long enough, no matter what, you will get up and serve. It's who we were created. It was like part of our destiny. But I look back and what the Lord has been saying, are you aware that Martha was distracted and serving when she should have been at his feet with Mary? And so Mary gained something that Martha missed because she was serving. Mary was at his feet with him, knew his heart, knew who he was, had a relationship in a different way than Martha because she could stop and pause and be with him. And then later, Lazarus dies. And they call for Jesus, and Jesus takes days to get there. And they say they dearly love him. Like that Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, like dearly loved Lazarus. I love that it's John saying that, because John's the one who knows who Jesus loved, dearly beloved. But Jesus finally arrives, and you watch Martha go into the normal mode of like runs to him and says, why weren't you here? Why weren't you here? We can read it. Whew. Trying to find the right verse so we don't read the whole. Okay, then Martha, verse 20, John 11, verse 20. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I will know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. She's saying all the right stuff. Am I right? She's saying all of the right things. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. But she's not getting it. She's saying all the right things. I grew up in a Christian home, third generation missionary. I know the right things to say. I know how to be stoic in the hard situations. I know how to be faithful, but sometimes it's not faith. It's just actions and learned behaviors. And so she's doing what she knows is right. She knows the right theology. Yes, he will rise again once, like later. Jesus said to her, and then I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. And when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, the teacher has come and is calling for you. So Mary never came till she heard that she was called. So as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, She's going to the tomb to weep there. And then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not have died. Exact same thing as Martha. No difference. Watch Jesus' response. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. Jesus wept. He felt the pain. He knew what he was going to do. He knew Lazarus was going to be raised again. But he felt the pain of what they were feeling. He felt the pain. And then the Jews said, See how he loved him. And then they said, Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and the stone lay against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. She doesn't get it. She's concerned about the stench of Lazarus, where this is Jesus. And Jesus said to her, Did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the people who were standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now, when he had said those things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, Loose him and let him go. Again, the tomb. I just like the dead things coming alive. The Lord's on that for me. But I'm noticing the different responses with Mary and Martha. There's something about if we can lay at Jesus' feet, our response later in the hard times looks different. Our cry and our tears and our weeping at his feet gets a different response than our empty words. Does that make sense? That there's something about us knowing who God is, that knowing that we can weep at his feet, knowing that we can come to him in pain, knowing that his heart cry is for our nations, for this world, for our people, for our community, for our families to see freedom, and coming there with our pain, with whatever he has laid on our heart or whatever we have experienced, that knowing in the hard time it shifts the response. It shifts our response. It shifts his response. He loves you no matter what. But there's something in the response there. And then I love that the next chapter, where is it? Then Mary, they made a supper and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. The next chapter, I don't know how to fully verbalize what the Lord has been teaching me here. The next chapter, she steps into something because she knows him. She's wept with him. He's felt her pain. She understands something, and she grasps it because Lazarus was raised from the dead. She actually doesn't even fully know, probably, but she is actually preparing him and prophetically preparing him for the burial. That's what people poured on people when they were going to be buried. So we talk about this life-changing worship that she laid everything out, but it took her being at his feet. It took her weeping with him, knowing who God was in the pain of instances, that she actually stepped into something prophetically and powerful. Does that make sense? There's these links between us being real with where we're at, real with being at his feet, and then feeling pain if pain comes up. He's not fearful of her pain when her brothers died and she's weeping. She knows who he is because she spent so much time learning from him. She grasps his who he was. But she still wept, and Jesus wept with her. He's not afraid of your weeping. He's not afraid of your pain. He's not afraid of your circumstance. And then as we feel that, as we grasp who he is, even in our pain, even the hardest situations, some of you have walked some really difficult times these last 2 years. He's not afraid of the pain you have felt in your lifetime, in the last 2 years. But unless you can feel it, know who he is in that area, you're going to miss prophetically what the next step is. He's pulling you into something. He wants you to be released at his feet to pray, released at his feet to weep, know who he is, and then you'll step into something more. There's even more. He tells us, like, more dancing for mourning, beauty for ashes. He wants those things. He wants to exchange them. We need to not fear exchanging them. If men who were warrior kings, if you read Psalms, it's all about weeping. He's pretty dramatic. I've cried on the couch. You bottle all my tears. Like, David is feeling everything he is feeling. And if warrior kings can feel pain and be honest with the Lord and cry with what they're feeling, so can you. Wealth builders, we hear of Job. What does he say? He says, my friends scorn me, my eyes pour out to God in Job 16:20. If wealth builders, people who give birth to game changers, Hannah was actually crying in the synagogue, in the chapel, I don't know what they're called, synagogues, crying in anguish. And I think it was Eli. He didn't actually grasp what she was doing. He thought she was drunk because he was so disjointed from what the Lord was doing, or moves of the Spirit. But she was crying out in anguish from her barrenness and ends up giving birth to one of, like, a game changer of a priest. There's something about feeling our pain. Perfume pourers can cry out to God in their pain and suffering. So can you, to feel it all. Let him soothe you. He paid for your pain and suffering. He never promised you'd be happy-go-lucky your whole life. But he did promise he'd bring joy. He did promise you'd persevere. He did promise for hope. Do you know that hope sits different now after I got free? Hope sits different. I was hopeful before, but there's a whole new level of hope and expectation. Not only for me, but for people. I've seen people set free all over the world over Zoom this past year. I've seen wild things happen. And my hope expectations have risen because I know that even in my pain, God's going to meet me there. But he's going to do that for every single person that will weep at his feet, that will go to him, that will feel the pain. He's paid for your pain. He wants to be there in it. And so I just want you guys to feel permission. If there are things that are holding you back, if there's pain that you have not resolved, if there's lies that have been tormenting, if there's stuff that has just felt restrictive, the Lord wants to let you know he wants to bring freedom. If you resonated with second guessing, mental torment, let's go after that. I'll leave the rest of my preach. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I was like, I must say. No. I think we're going to go up. Is that good? Does that sound good? How many of you are like, actually, I want the Lord to bring some extra, I want freedom in certain things? Ruben's raised his hand. Thanks, Ruben. Okay, so we're going to go after some of this because you don't have to leave the same. If you've been struggling with certain things, the Lord actually wants to bring freedom. If he is highlighting things, if something I've said has triggered you, lean into it. Lean into it. Don't run from it. Don't ignore it. Actually lean into what he is bringing up inside of you. Lean into what is like, oh, actually, this is something I want freedom in. The Lord has paid for this freedom. I want to step into it. So let's start. We'll have ministry after, but I'm just going to also pray corporately. Does that sound good? Okay, I should look at you. Good. Okay, if you resonate with feeling like you second guess and you've been struggling with mental torment, would you stand? look around the room. You're not alone. This is not something, I feel like this is something the church has not been like, we haven't been going after, we haven't been aware of it. And the Lord actually wants to bring freedom. So right now, Lord, hey, I just thank you for these people. I thank you for their minds. I thank you that you want them to have a sound mind, that you've paid for a sound mind. And right now, would you bring up any lies that have just been festering inside of them? Any lies or words that have spoken that have actually begun to make them second guess what they're called to be, second guess their value, second guess their identity? Would you just begin to bring those to remembrance right now?